ask me to like talk about myself, I don't really know what else to talk about. You probably relate to this. I don't feel like
Right.
they're lifting and the coaching business is basically what my life is. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
And who do you work with mainly?
Honestly, it depends quite a bit. I currently my roster is primarily coaches like yourself. So I would say more advanced gen pop and then coaches that want to learn more either a like, hey, I've been a coach for a long time, but I don't feel like I necessarily look the part. And like for so many coaches, that's such an important piece. That's not like how you look is by any means the most important thing, but I do think practicing what you preach is a very important part of coaching. That's like an entirely different tangent, right? But so many coaches hop on board with, and like I've been there myself. When I hired my first coach, that was why. But so many coaches hop on board to like, hey, I don't feel like I'm practicing what I'm preaching, or I don't know how to like give the level of service that my clients deserve online. I want to see what you guys do so I can learn from you guys and apply it to my own clients and get in great shape along the way. So primarily people that want to get a little bit deeper into like macros, like more advanced programming, things of that nature. Say people that have been training consistently, been tracking macros consistently for at least 2 years is like 90 to 95% of our clients.
Yeah. And I got awesome results with you. I mean, I still am. We're still working together and I love your programming. And thank you so much for this month's workout. Like I love a new workout every
That
single
was so
month.
fun to
So
write.
yeah.
Absolutely. That was one of my favorite programs that I had just had. There's some programs like every week that like stand out. I was like, damn, that was so much fun to write. I don't know if you get like this, but I there's a couple where I'm like,
Yeah.
I had so much fun writing. That was like one of the most fun things I put together. And yours was definitely one of those last week. So I was stoked when you said in your check-in, like, I'm really loving this training, by the way, like this programming, by the way, because I was very much like enjoying putting that together as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I totally appreciate it. Um, so like when somebody comes, when they first start working with you, how do you approach their exercise for someone that wants to lose weight? And do you recommend cardio for fat loss? So kind of touch on that a little bit.
Okay, absolutely. So when someone hops on board, yeah, first and foremost, we need to get clear on their goals, right? So we kind of have, hey, I want to lose weight versus I want to lose fat and improve my body composition, right? Now, a lot of people will come in and say like, hey, yeah, my goal is weight loss, when actually their goal is I want my body composition. Like if your goal is strictly weight loss, then like, okay, you literally just want to see the scale drop. Don't care too much of like the end result if there's like any sort of definition or like so much like how specifically your body is shaped. Basically, we just want to be lighter. And of course, like if you have a lot to lose, that will improve your body composition as well. But really what most people are saying is like, hey, I want to look lean and fine and I want to feel strong, not just like I want to lose weight. And that's like it's important to understand, because if it's just like, hey, no, I literally just care about seeing the scale drop, then okay, cool. You can like if you pay attention to your steps and you're on point with your nutrition, then you can make that happen. But if you want to achieve like the best body composition, again, if you want to be lean, defined, typically that comes with not only getting leaner, which is primarily a product of your nutrition, but also it's going to be a product of building some muscle along the way, right? Like uh, I, for some reason, the this analogy of a coral reef, it doesn't really work very well, but it always comes to mind when I'm explaining this to people as of late. So bear with me on this. It's kind of like, okay, your body fat is like the ocean water, right? And I don't really know if this is how coral reefs work, but again, bear with me. Like
Okay.
there's this coral reef under there, right? That's like
Mhm.
your muscle. Okay. So, or like, so to build definition, it's basically like we're trying to like uncover some of this coral reef. So your training is kind of like we're building up this coral reef, but we also have, so if your training isn't, if you're not training in the correct manner, so basically if we're not doing smart resistance training, then your coral reef isn't going to build in a manner that you'll actually like look more defined when the water drops, right? It'll just be kind of like in the ocean water again is like your body fat, which comes through your nutrition. This is such an analogy, but hopefully it makes sense.
I'm getting
Um, you with
it.
me so far?
Yep.
Right. So again, like training and nutrition, for most people, the mistake many people make is like only looking at training or only at nutrition. But there are two things that very much like need to go in hand for the results that most people want. So again, like when we're looking at, to bring it back to your original answer or your original question, when we're looking at, okay, how do we approach training to improve your body composition? The thing to realize is it's smart to focus most of your training on building strength and typically we'd say like 5 to 15, 5 to 30 rep range, rather than trying to burn as many calories as possible. The thing to realize is like you would crush yourself with like a HIIT style of training super consistently, and still it only accounts for about 5% of the overall calories that you burn in a day, right? So just not that many. Now, on the flip side, when it comes to getting more defined, again, the thing to understand, and I'm absolutely like someone that's like, oh, no one should say toned, right? Like muscles only grow or shrink. It's like we need to meet people where they're at. But again, the thing to realize is like basically your muscles get bigger or smaller. And like you getting more toned or more defined is a product of building bigger muscles while losing fat, right? So again, the coral reef analogy. So your coral reef is more visible. But again, if we aren't training, the thing is like if we aren't taking a muscle to the science seems to show us within about a good number to aim for is 3 reps shy of failure or less, then we're not actually fatiguing it enough to actually stimulate new muscle growth. So when we're doing like a HIIT style of training or a style of training that's based on burning a ton of calories, you're not burning that many calories. So it's just not that great for fat loss. But you're also like the thing that causes you to end the set again isn't like, damn, okay, like I'm trying to grow my glutes while I'm doing this, right? But it's not like you stop your sets because man, my glutes are just like so fatigued that I can't like do any more reps, right? It's like my cardio system is absolutely gassed and thus I needed rest. So again, it's kind of shitty for losing fat, like because we like per unit of time invested is just not great for fat loss, but it's also not great for building muscle. So it's kind of like the worst of both worlds, right? But it's a good way to feel exhausted all the time in the gym. So again, like it's smart for, hopefully I'm not getting too far off track from your question, but basically then what we want to focus on is getting stronger in the 5 to 30 rep range over time with variations of squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull. And that'll essentially, like if we focus on that, that's like at the simplest level, an easy recipe to, okay, I know I'm building some lean muscle, and if my nutrition is on point, then I will again basically get leaner and fine. So from the training perspective, that's typically like, and I'm sure we can, if you want to dig deeper into that, we absolutely can. So then like to bring it back to the question about cardio, typically I start clients with a step count and focusing on nutrition, right? Again, nutrition is going to be like when we look at the interview, I know off air we're talking about, you were just listening to the interview that I did with Peter Fishin, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about there was like, okay, so to burn 100 calories, let's say to burn 100 calories, it takes you 15 minutes walking on the incline stair mill or the incline treadmill, right? Or you could literally just eat what, 10, 11 grams less of fat. Like it's so much easier, like from a scalability perspective, people pretty quickly run into, because we do have like this, when it comes again, it's going to come down to this calories in, calories out equation, right? At the most simple level, of course, we can make it more complex than that, and it typically needs to be that, but like at the most simple level, it's basically like how are we controlling energy in and energy out. So for most people, like from a time perspective, and again, like it comes back to this idea of you can't burn off your diet basically. When it comes back to this, like we need to make sure that, or nutrition is just such from a scalability and like time perspective, most people just have such limited time already that like trying to add more and more cardio to increase fat loss isn't realistic. So for most people, like we focus almost exclusively on nutrition. Hey, also like steps are going to be an important part of this, because also we know that when we're dieting, as you eat less, you don't necessarily want to lose fat, right? So one of the ways your body will defend against that is you'll see without realizing it, there will be this downregulation of all these things like pacing, fidgeting, blinking. And across the course of a day and a week, that can equate to a lot less calories burned. So you're eating less, but burning less. And if we don't account for that, and again, this can vary drastically between people. Don't account for that. It can literally be like, can literally stall your fat loss. So, and well, we can't say like, hey, yo, make sure you fidget a ton all day and blink a lot.
Right.
We can set some type of step goal. So at least then we are kind of like setting, okay, we know a consistent baseline that your movement is at, because otherwise, if you were just like steps and you weren't hitting any specific target across the course of the diet, you would see your steps decrease more and more and more and more, right? So typically, I've found with like 95% of clients to get lean don't actually need to do cardio. We do implement cardio sometimes, but it's not for fat. This is very rarely for fat loss purposes.
Right.
Um, sometimes to like get to, and even like the last, like before your photo shoot, did we have you doing any cardio?
No.
That's what I was gonna say. I think like the last 4 or 5 clients that I've gotten ready for a photo shoot haven't done like any cardio at all. And it's very, very much like if you just focus on your nutrition and hitting a step goal is smart. If you enjoy traditional cardio, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think the problem is like so many people think that they need to do endless cardio to get the results they want. And then it's like, well, I really, really hate this. If this is what I have to do, then it's not even worth it. When really it's so much more like your nutrition and hitting a step goal is smart. Very long answer, but that's what I got for you.
Oh, that's perfect. I think too, a lot of my clients are, older, and we're from that era where you have to, it's burn more, eat less. And
Right.
it's just so, ingrained, so that when I come to, when a woman comes to me and I say, hey, we're going to kind of scale back on your cardio because it's actually making you really hungry. It's not, you're not going to be able to adhere to your diet as easily if you are focusing on that. They just don't get it. But wait, I overate yesterday, so I'm going to do all this cardio today. So it's kind of like shifting the gears and getting them to focus a little bit more on strength training, but I'm not burning any calories. And I'm like, that's,
And
not the goal.
it is very much like I do think that like different generations, it's been instilled in more. Like I know my dad, that's something I've talked to him about. I don't anymore because I kind of gave up on that one because he doesn't. It's interesting how we don't have to get into that. But anyways, like with him, I know is very much the same. Like it's almost ingrained. Like, okay, if I like feel like I messed up yesterday, I'm gonna go run it off today, right?
Mhm.
It's like, yo,
Yeah.
like let's look at what we could change in your nutrition maybe over the next couple of days. And like maybe that would be a lot easier than like if you go run a mile or 2 miles, no matter how brutal it feels, like you're still not burning that much, right? And but it's gonna be a lot harder than if we just like made these subtle tweaks to your nutrition over the next couple of days.
Right. Or that burning to earn, those turkey trots and things like that. I'm just going to do this crushing workout so I can eat whatever the hell I want.
Mhm.
So, well, that basically sums up how to build it, how building muscle, will help with fat loss. Because why does it help with fat loss?
So muscle is a metabolically active tissue, meaning that it takes calories for your body to maintain. So kind of like our heart, any of our organs, like even at rest, they take calories just for your body to basically like keep them alive, right? So we do burn some calories via adding muscle mass. That is something that in the past was pretty overplayed. I know like for the longest time I told clients like, hey, if we add on a bunch of muscle, this is absolutely going to like jack up your metabolism big time because you're going to have so much more muscle mass and your metabolism is going to be like through the roof. When really it's like per pound of muscle we add is about 6 calories per day extra that we burn, like just from that component of it. The biggest part of like when we look at the metabolism boosting benefits of it is basically we have a denser body, right? So if we are removing a more and like we don't dense is probably not the best like way to put it, but again, like our body as a whole, like when we're moving it through space, or like we're stronger and we're lifting heavier weights, like it takes more energy to move that more dense body or like to move those heavier weights, energy, aka calories. So thus we burn more through our day-to-day activities, right?
Right.
So from that extent, it can be helpful. That said, like again, when it comes to building muscle for fat loss, I think more so than like, and we could talk a bit also about like when we look at your insulin sensitivity, right? So much of one of the best ways to improve insulin sensitivity, and basically allow your body to make better use of carbohydrates is to lift weights, because especially in that period immediately post training, insulin sensitivity is going to be so much higher. But really, like the biggest thing is not so much like, hey, we can do this and this will allow you to burn a lot more calories. Like no matter what, fat loss should be, you should look at like your nutrition as the primary catalyst for your fat loss. And training, again, almost always like if it helps you burn some extra calories and get there quicker, that's great. But again, like if you're designing it around that, it'll probably be an ineffective program. Whereas rather it's like, okay, when I get there, how do I want to look and how do I want to feel, right? And for most people, that's again like bringing it back to like, okay, do you want to just lose weight and like maybe you look, and again it's like depending on what the person wants to accomplish, but again, like if you want to get lean and defined when you get there, then training in a smart manner is a key component of that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, you're not gonna, if you lose weight and you don't have any muscle under there, it's not gonna look good. You're just gonna be
Exactly.
skinny fat. You want to have a little bit of, you want to replace that fat with some volume and have some volume on there anyways, for that toned
Exactly.
look.
And that's so many women that I've worked with, and that's more and more, I would say more common like when I started coaching online than now. Typically we'll push people into the building phase before this. But I remember initially like clients, a lot of females that I would work with would hop on board, and the same is true for men. But a lot of women would hop on board and like, okay, right away, I want to diet. I want to get super lean. And then like, okay, you are very lean right now, but hey, like I still don't look the way I want. Like I don't look as strong as I want. I don't like,
Yes.
why don't, and it's like, okay, we need to add muscle, right? So it is such an important piece of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you please explain for my listeners why it's almost impossible for a woman to get huge lifting weights
Absolutely.
or that bulky, that's
No,
the
no.
biggest concern that I have.
So the thing to understand is building muscle is a very, very slow process. Now it's thought that women like can gain muscle at the same relative rate to men, but women just start at, typically, not to like be stereotypical or anything, but I think this is kind of like science. So I don't,
Yeah.
anyways, um, typically women start with relatively lower overall muscle mass than men. So thus like their ceiling is a decent amount lower as well. Right. And the thing to realize is like, think about how many guys who again starting with a higher amount of relative mass, starting with more testosterone, like, and as a whole, like the male hormonal profile is typically going to be more optimal, so basically for building muscle, right?
Yeah.
So like think about, the easiest way to look at this is like think about how many men you know that have just been trying to get jacked for years and it hasn't happened yet, right? So and it's just because like even if you're training in a smart manner, building muscle is a very, very, very slow process. Like for most women, um, like if you build 1 to 2 pounds of muscle in a month, that's great, great, great progress, right? But even like if you add 1 to 2 pounds of muscle, it's not gonna be like, oh, holy shit, I am swole now. It's like
Right.
you added 30 to 40 pounds of muscle. Then like it's gonna be, oh man, okay, maybe. And of course, again, it's dependent on like what you want. But if your goal is to like not be bulky, then it's like, okay, it's kind of, I've used the analogy before, lots of analogies today.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you like got run over. Like this is kind of like getting run over by a giant turtle, right? Like it's like way off in the distance, we see like this giant turtle just like coming towards you at a turtle's pace, of course.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, look at that giant turtle. And then it's like 2 years later, oh, it got a little bit closer, right? Like it's something that we very, very intentionally, if you were trying to get jacked, especially as a woman, you very, very intentionally have to try to do so for years. Like same thing with that turtle. Like we would have to be like, oh, it's got a little closer, a little closer. Oh, this month it got like 3 steps closer, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing to understand is just it takes so long. Unless you are as a natural, which
Right.
I'm pretty sure that most of your listeners, most of our listeners are natural anyways. And I think if you're not, you're probably not worried about getting jacked. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
um, and just one last thing. Why do Bulgarian split squats suck so much?
That is a question that I've thought about many times myself. Um, I think the thing about Bulgarian split squats is they just seem to wreck both your quads and your glutes at the same time. I don't know if that's how it is for you, but I know especially like when we add in like a deficit, right? It's just like in unilateral work as a whole, if we're doing like we have to do one leg and then we have to do the other leg, it's like fuck, okay, now I have to match the reps. I think like the mental aspect of it, but I mean, especially like if we're not doing if it's like a freestanding Bulgarian split squat, whereas like as you know, like I really like a Bulgarian split squat variation where like we're holding onto the rack with one hand, so stability isn't a limiting factor as well.
I like
Right?
those too. Yeah.
I like those are like a safety bar, where you can hold on the rack with both hands. But no matter what, like any variation, and again, I can't fully explain it, but there was just like a unique kind of pain with Bulgarian split squats that nothing else can. Truly, I think there's such an effective movement. Again, like no matter what your goal is, if it's just like functional strength, a normal Bulgarian split squat. If you want to build muscle, like a deficit Bulgarian split squat with like hand support. But also, again, there is just like that unique pain that is just the worst. I would say the only thing comparable to that is like, have you ever done a soul bike sprints?
I have. I don't mind those, but that's probably because of my spin background.
Okay. I would say for me personally, like assault bike sprints with short rest intervals, but you're basically like an all-out assault bike sprint
Yeah.
for like a minute, right? I would say that is pretty comparable to like the pain for me
Stuckness.
personally, but those are the only two things that quite get there.
That's true. I've never done it for a minute. I think at one point you did program some assault bike squat things in for me, but I don't think I ever did a minute. I think it was like 30 seconds or 20 seconds. Or trying to get a watt range, I think.
Okay.
It's hard. It is hard. Like it's like, whoa. But,
and that's like I know some guys will test like their 10-minute like their max distance in 10 minutes and just like that sounds like the literal worst thing you could do.
No, that doesn't sound fun. Is there anything that you want to add on that I haven't asked?
I mean, I think that was a good kind of baseline of everything. Again, just understanding that for most people, the physique that you want, men and women alike, involves typically adding muscle and losing fat. And very much we need to look at, like, if you're looking at training as your way of burning fat, it's basically just a recipe to spin your wheels for a long time. Always feel like you're working hard, but never see the results, right? So the nutrition component of it is very important, but also on the flip side, you'll feel like you're not seeing results because the way that you're training also isn't going to actually help you build muscle, right? And again, like getting lean, getting defined does basically just come down to building muscle and losing fat. So I think that I would say that's the biggest piece of it. Again, like training different variations. If you focus just on variations of squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, if you take some time to audit how hard you're training within those movements, because this is another important piece of it. And I know like that's like why we have you do form videos is, hey, like how hard are you truly pushing this? Because I know your technique is solid on most things, but again, like, and like that's the same reason I have a coach who I send this to as well. Just like it keeps you honest, because a lot of times it is easy to like, okay, I could maybe have squeezed out 3 more, or like a lot of times people will just arbitrarily hit the top end of a rep range. Like, okay, this was 8 to 12 reps. I hit 12 reps, so I'm going to stop here. When if we like look and assess, like, okay, let's say you were doing back squats. When we look and assess that, Okay, you stopped at 12 because the rep range said 12, but you literally could have done like 9 more of those. So did you actually get anything out of that set? Probably not a lot, right? So again, it's a good way to spend time. So auditing your effort is a very important piece of that. I would say also making sure again that, because if you want to get leaner and more refined, again, we want fatigue within the muscles that we're trying to train to be the limiting factor. So the last thing that can really hamper people from accomplishing that is not resting long enough between sets. So if you turn all your training into like a giant circuit, again, your heart rate will be jacked up.
Yeah.
And it'll feel like you're working hard. But again, like the thing that's causing you to stop your sets is probably your cardio system and you're exhausted, not like, okay, again, like that example from earlier, my glutes are so fatigued that I have to stop the set. So again, like resting 90 seconds to 3 minutes between sets, or at very least between like a superset of 2 movements, is so helpful for most people.
I love that you added that in too, because it's so typical. It's like people get their set in, like, okay,
Right.
all right, next.
No,
It's like,
absolutely.
if you could just crank out 3 of those sets, like, no problem, you're not working hard enough.
And that's truly like auditing the intensity is so damn important. And that's just not something that's talked about, right? But it's probably, I don't want to say it's the most important thing, because we have like, I would say execution and effort are both very, very important. Like we can't get results without either. But
Right.
again, like it is such an important piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, it all goes together. Awesome. Thank you so much for all this information.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you? And I'll link in the show notes to
Perfect.
your socials, but
So you can follow me on Instagram at Jeremiah Bair. Last name is Bair. Check out our website. It is bairfit.com. We drop new super in-depth vlogs every week. My podcast is Living Lean. You can find that wherever podcasts are. And that is pretty much it.
yeah, and you guys, you got to check out his blogs because they are, like he said, very detailed. So thank you so much for coming on. It was, I so appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.
Of course. Thank you for having me.